A cop in Columbus, Ohio shot and killed a teenager, 16-year-old by the name of Ma'Khia Bryant. And this happened as the country had been celebrating the conviction of Derek Chauvin, a former Minneapolis cop who murdered George Floyd in broad daylight by kneeling on his neck for longer than 9 minutes. Police said that the girl had threatened 2 others with a knife before the shooting, playing segments of body camera video that showed the victim lunging towards someone in a driveway before an officer fired 4 shots. A knife is visible in the driveway next to the girl as police perform CPR. I watched the video. I want to just be clear that we're going based off of what police have released. They haven't released the full video. They've released a portion of the video. And based on what I've seen specifically, that description appears to be correct. That doesn't mean that you don't have non-lethal options in order to get the situation under control. In this case, the cop, Nicholas Reardon, decided to go for his lethal weapon, a gun, and shot at Bryant 4 times. Columbus Mayor Andrew Githner says this: "We know based on this footage, the officer took action to protect another young girl in our community, but a family is grieving tonight, and this young 15-year-old girl will never be coming home." And Hazel Bryant, who identified herself as the victim's aunt, said that her niece got into the fight with another person at her foster home. Bryant said the victim had a knife but dropped it before the officer shot her. So obviously we're getting a different story from a family member there and a different story from the police. But my takeaway is, even if the cops saw her as a threat to others, why do they have non-lethal weapons if they're not gonna deploy them in these types of situations?
Yeah. I mean, recently I would say they have them so they can pretend that they were trying to draw them when they actually drew their gun and shot someone. But this time they decided to just skip straight to the gun. Yeah, look, I know that on the right, the video means that they can now just celebrate about this and mock it. Steven Crowder and his group were doing that today. I personally think that something can still be a tragedy, regardless of the fact that she had the knife. We can wonder about bits of context we don't have information on currently, like they say she was in a foster home. Okay, well, we know enough about foster homes to know that there are potentially things that could contribute to that. The fact that he came in the way that he didn't try to do it non-lethally. People attack people with knives in other countries and don't get shot dead. Like, you're capable of disarming them or stopping them. They do that routinely in other places. Was it like, obviously it could have worked and nothing bad could have happened here? No, not necessarily. This makes it a more complex tragedy, but still a tragedy.
Yeah, definitely.
And we can think that, regardless of the fact that she had a knife. We can wish that it hadn't happened. We can wish that things went differently. That maybe, I don't know, maybe if they got there faster, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned people in other countries with knives, essentially not getting shot and killed, but cops will find a way to restrain them or de-escalate the situation. That happens in this country too.
Yeah.
And so people were posting those videos on social media showing cops dealing with someone who either has a mental health issue, someone who's unruly, someone who's armed with a knife. And it's amazing how in some cases they don't need to open fire. They can find a way to de-escalate the situation without using a lethal weapon. So that's certainly an option. It's just that those options are not really deployed anymore. I remember years and years ago when we would cover police brutality stories, the big story was they're using their tasers too much. Now it's like, why aren't you guys using your tasers instead? Now it's just, let's use our firearms immediately.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a frustrating situation. I do want to go to this video of her mother. She wanted to reflect on who Ma'Khia was and how she was an honor roll student, and obviously this is incredibly tragic for everyone, including her mother. Take a look.
Ma'Khia was named after a male prophet in the Bible. She was a very loving, peaceful little girl. She was 16 years old. She was an honor roll student. And Ma'Khia had a motherly nature about her. She promoted peace. And that's something that I want to always be remembered.
And there's I have a lot of questions about what happened before the cops were called, right? Because Columbus interim police chief Michael Woods said that just after 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, police received a 911 call from someone who reported that women were trying to stab them and then hung up. Dispatchers were unable to gather any information about the weapons or what the weapons were at the scene, he added. So my question is, all right, well, what if Makia was the one who called the cops and felt that she was in danger? Like, how do the cops know that she wasn't trying to defend herself? Like, I don't know. I have a lot of questions. I don't know the answers to them. Like, I just think it's too early for anyone to judge and place the blame on the person who was gunned down here, and that's a 16-year-old.
Sure, and the thing is, like I was saying about the right, like celebrating, like, you know, they consider this a great moment where, look, some people jumped to conclusions and imagined that this is like so many cases where we imagined that none of this was true. She didn't have a knife, none of that context that's been added. Can you maybe understand why people might think that? How many times have we been through this cycle? How many times have we been through this cycle in like the last 2 weeks? I think you can forgive people for assuming that the pattern that plays out hundreds of times every year might have played out in this case. It's a tragedy, even though it wasn't the exact same thing, but maybe, like if you consider yourself an outsider to this conversation and you wonder why people would jump to conclusions like that, maybe think about what it would take for someone to reflexively assume, oh God, it happened again. Why would you believe that? Well, you believe that because that's what you had experienced in your community and in other communities. That's the grief that you had play out over and over and over again. So if you are an outsider, maybe this is an opportunity for some empathy rather than some sort of cheap feeling of superiority because someone you don't agree with on everything politically got a detail wrong before the information was out.
Yeah, and can we just talk about a contradiction that I've noticed with the right wing that drives me crazy? So one of the things that Steven Crowder was upset about was the fact that the police department released a portion of the body camera footage. And he felt that the police department was wrong in doing that because they gave in to the mob. No, they have a responsibility and obligation to release that footage to the public, which pays for the salaries of those officers.
And pays for
cameras. They work for us, right? They work for us. And so on one hand, you have the right wing that's like, oh, big government. We don't like big government. We hate big government. Nanny state, nanny state. No, you guys love big government, especially when big government is crushing the people you guys hate. They love big government. But in terms of the body camera footage, no, it's not giving into a mob. It's them fulfilling their literal obligation to the very people who pay their salaries.
Yeah.
People forget cops work for us, okay? They pretend as if this is like some private entity that's being like attacked and is making decisions based on mob rule. That's not what's happening here. They work for us and they should face accountability.
Well, and also he's responding to the fact that like, oh, there's been a change. All of a sudden they're releasing the footage quickly. Maybe ask yourself, why did they used to take so long? Why was it that you'd wait 9 months when all the information that was needed to evaluate a police killing was in that video? And in terms of like people putting pressure on public servants to do what they want, I would say in this case, seems like a net good for everyone. In this case, good for the cops, right?
Right.
It resolved the situation for some people, maybe do that more often. I don't know, how many months did they spend trying to get people to surround places where the votes are being counted and hound Raffensperger and Kemp and go to the Capitol and put pressure on them explicitly to get their representatives, including Republicans, to overturn the vote? Okay, we all want people to pressure the government to do the right thing. Some of us just have really twisted ideas of what the right thing is.
That's right. And look, on one hand, I really can't blame Steven Crowder for saying incredibly stupid things when he weighs in on serious issues like police brutality. His whole bread and butter is to say offensive, awful things, get demonetized, and then whine about it. That's it. That's all Steven Crowder does. And when you spend all your time and energy on that, it's kind of hard to make sound, cogent arguments.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.